Good evening and welcome to Titan Talk. Hey
Good
guys,
start.
thanks for joining us today. Today I have myself, Captain Coop, and I have the wonderful, as always, Mr. Jordan Roberts with me today. Yay! So today we wanted to do we wanted to talk a little bit about emergency preparedness and some practical skills that can go along with that. And so just things to keep in mind when you're dealing with emergency responses or being aware of your potential hazards in the area when it comes to that area and the physical security, that goes along with it. So we just want to talk a little bit about that, maybe go over some fun times that we've had doing events where with physical security and where we've got to worry about hazards and items like that, and just kind of put some stuff together for you guys. And
Yeah.
if you guys have any questions or anything, you can let us know in chat and I'll read them off. To those that are here, Dylan, thanks for joining us. To Mr. Jarvis, welcome. It's good to see you. It's been a minute. So kind of going over the beginning of this is emergency response is when you're looking at your site or you're looking at your area when you're talking about what you're doing when it comes to physical security, things you need to be aware of, or what are the emergency response protocols. And this can go for any number of things. This can go for fire, flood, blood. This can go for active shooter or anything, earthquakes, anything like that. You want to know what your
tornadoes,
your response protocols are for those, and they should be listed in either your SOP binder, which is your standard operating procedures binder, or they should be listed. The client should have their own as well that you could also read up on. We've got more than a few clients that have that.
Oh, yeah.
Where we'll have our own protocols, our own standard operating procedures, and then they'll have their own emergency response protocols and stuff like that. And so we'll always tell our officers to read up on those. But that's the first key to understanding them, is to read and know what your actual emergency response protocols are for whatever the emergency is going to be. And again, fire, flood, tornado, earthquake, any number of things. And so knowing those. And then if you don't know what something means in those, asking a supervisor for clarification, because the supervisor should have a better understanding, hopefully, of what you're looking at and have a better understanding of how it should all work. And so doing that and then coming up with a structured plan as you're sitting there, and this is something that I've done to keep myself awake at night.
scenarios,
And run myself through a scenario.
Yeah.
You know,
I can't tell you how many scenarios I've ran through my head, countless.
Yeah.
Whether it be something as simple as, hey, somebody comes in and wants to start an argument with me, to active shooter, to a fire. I can't tell you how many scenarios have gone through this cranium.
Yep. We used to have a cave, and in the cave you have no reception. And this was a long time ago.
We still have something similar.
We have something similar, but this was different. And same basic principle. It really was.
Yeah.
But I was covering for an officer who had a family emergency, and I was sitting there thinking to myself, and I was doing check-in with the people that were doing that they were coming in, and I was like, man, I got to sit here and think about how I got to respond, because of this. I mean, the cave itself was massive. I mean, huge. No radio signal, no cell service worked, nothing. As soon as you went back like 100 yards, zip. And so it was barren back there, and so I was sitting there thinking to myself, I was like, well, if I've got to get a hold of somebody, or if I've got to figure out where something is, or like, how do I go about that? And so I'd run myself through scenarios about who am I contacting? How do I find a supervisor that works there? Or is there a map that details the size of the property and that I can look at and see where the general basis of everything is? And so when I finally got time, I went and found a map, and they had a huge map of the whole cave. And I was like, oh, and it showed every component of it, every client that was in it, and and it was detailed too. And so I just sat there and I was like, okay, so this is, and I ran myself through a scenario, and like, how would I approach this situation? How would I do that? And I just legit just walked through the whole thing.
Yep. The one that I'm thinking of, I can't say the post's name, but the officer is stationed at the top of the cave at the entrance. But they'll go in for checks. Some standard checks in the lobby down there. It's a massive cave. And same thing happens. No radio contact, no phone signal. If we get a dispatch call and the officer's down there,
nobody knows.
Nobody knows. Bathrooms down there, break rooms down there.
So you got to run. So when you're in something like that, you got to run yourself through a scenario. Well, how do I address this, or what do I do? And working patrol. Kind of going back to that same thing, we used to do that same property on patrol a long time ago. And what we would do beforehand is we found there's one spot that you used to get service. I don't know if we still do. I haven't been down there as of recently. But there was one spot with the old radio system that you'd get service. It was okay, but you would come across. And so we would do our patrols, and when we were patrolling down there, we would stop there 3 or 4 times and check in. And if somebody missed a check-in, another patrol officer would come out and make sure that that person's okay.
When I would do a side check there and I'd roll down into the caves, I would call 10-7 out of service. You're not going to get a hold of me.
Yeah.
And I'd be down there as brief as possible, and then make my way to the top, and then immediately call 10-8. But I don't know if the current on-sites do anything like that. Probably should. Nothing really goes down.
But at the same time,
there,
that's that emergency preparedness thing. What are you thinking of? And also speaking of that same cave, they have fire plans, they have tornado plans, flood plans. They've got it all.
Massive
They got books of that stuff and everything. And they went and ran a fire drill one year.
They recently did one.
Yeah, and it was actually really cool to see how it all worked out and everything that way. But it was one of those things. It's like, okay, well, it's good to see that there's a plan, and there is a plan. 2, everybody knows how it works, and everybody knows what they're doing. So it's really nice to be able to see that kind of emergency preparedness and then the effectiveness of it.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I agree thoroughly. Running yourself through those scenarios is how you're going to be prepared. And if you are caught unprepared, not only does it look bad, but you're also putting other people in jeopardy, because the first person they're going to go to is you.
Yeah.
Emergency happens. They see badge. They go, hey, help me out here.
Yeah. What do I do? So, keep that stuff in mind when you're looking at those. Every time you go to a post, look for those emergency response protocols. If you don't know where they are, ask a supervisor. Supervisor will be able to tell you hopefully where they are.
Find the fire hydrants, find the AEDs.
Emergency exits. Something that we recently did with some of our locations, is we started asking our officers, how many people do you have on property? Because it's consistent. It's not something that fluctuates every day. That's consistent. This is how many people they have here. How many people do you have on property? Where are your exits located? What are the exits made of? Where are the secured entries? What secures the entries? What kind of access is there? How do you know if it's secure? And things like that. And so we were running them through those situations, so they were better prepared for that emergency service. Now they know, okay, I have roughly 500 people or 300 people on my property. I know they're situated in this area. If something were to go down, these are the 3 safe locations that everybody's supposed to go to. These are the routes they take. It makes it easier to plan that stuff out.
Do some research. Do some Googling. Find a real-world example. Go find a tornado response or a drill, and try and put it in your own life. You find a warehouse that's got a tornado drill, and they have their drill on a YouTube channel. Find it, see their response, and see if you can come up with some sort of similar plan while you're on site.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When you're looking at that stuff, Google, YouTube, everything, you can look up certain things that will help you with that stuff. You can Google emergency response protocols that will help you understand and learn and grow and have a better understanding of what to do. There's some very general ones that are out there that you can look up and you can learn from. And then there's very specific ones that you can look up and do the same thing. Okay, well, this doesn't exactly apply to my property, but I can use it in this way to help me learn so I can understand mine better.
If your typical post is a grocery store, and I guarantee you there's a fire drill or a tornado drill on YouTube or Google somewhere, and just a random store, that's going to be pretty applicable.
Yeah. Absolutely. So just, keep that stuff in. Something that it's always told, and you get a lot of clients that will do this, but it's best practices for preparation. And we just talked about this. Conducting regular drills. I said that we did a fire drill with that one client, and they recently did another one. I know that they do them. I think it's every two or three times a year. Our building does them, I think, 3 or 4 times a year. Well, they'll do an emergency preparedness drill where they'll run us through fire, flood, and stuff like that, to where we know what's going on and how to handle the building and the situation and the people that are in it. So running regular drills and being able to do that and analyzing the successfulness of it and what can be changed, what needs to be better, where can people be instead of this area, or is there a better space for them? Things like that. When you're running those drills or you're part of it, take that stuff into account and look at it and think and say, okay, well, maybe this is a great plan, but how can we maybe make it a little bit better, or how can we make it more efficient? Things like that will make you way better at understanding and of the preparedness drills. And they'll also, not only that, it will help you learn them and know them, so that way it's something that it's a muscle memory. It's not something you have to think about
Yeah.
It's something that you just know.
And this does not need to stop at your post.
No,
Take this home.
I do it at home.
So yeah, something I just relocated a memory in the back of my skull. My dad used to do fire drills at home. We would all be in our rooms, and he would set off the fire alarm test and gauged how we responded, and then he would go in and he'd make corrective action. I had a window that had access to a roof, and I chose to go out in the hall and take the stairs. I've got window access that leads onto a porch that I can get easily onto the ground. I didn't even consider it. Things like that. Take it home. Prepare your family.
I got a buddy who's a nurse, but he's got a specialization. I don't remember what it is. He's going to be mad when he figures out I'm talking about him. But he regularly will take. He's got practice tourniquets.
Yeah,
and he'll throw them at his kids. He'll throw them at his kids, and he'll say bleeding wound, femoral artery, left leg, and he'll say mid thigh or something, and they'll have to put it on. Now they don't tighten it down on him all the way, or he'll say lost my hand, bleeding from there, and they'll throw the tourniquet on, or he'll ask them questions. Same basic principle. He's preparing them for in case of an emergency.
Yep.
I'll tell you, his kids are real good about putting a tourniquet on.
I believe it.
Yeah,
I believe it. It doesn't take a lot of practice.
I didn't believe him one day, and he handed me one years ago, and I tossed it at his son, and I said, bleed on my left leg, just above the knee, and I laid down, and his son ran right over, pulled my leg out from under me, threw the tourniquet on, and tightened it, and I was like, "Ooh!" And he goes, "Got him." I was like, "Okay,
all right,
we can take that off now."
Congratulations, your 5-year-old knows how to put on a tourniquet.
I mean, it's really cool. You can see it. Like I said, he didn't have to think about it; he just knew. So that's how that training comes in.
Yeah, be prepared. You never know. You never know, especially fires in the house.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like something that would never happen until it does.
Yep, absolutely. And that leads into the awareness of the potential hazards that we face. This goes to not just what is maybe, your building, what's your building made of, so you know that it's more susceptible to fire than this building is, but knowing where, like, your area you live in, we are in Tornado Alley.
Oh, yeah.
Tornadoes are huge here, so having an emergency prepared plan for tornadoes is massive. You've got to have that because that's where we live. Flooding, not so much. Does it flood? Sure, but there's a higher risk for tornadoes. I come from the desert. We have a huge risk for fire.
I'd say there's a higher risk for fire here than there is flood.
Yeah. So knowing where you live and being able to adapt and adjust for that, and knowing what you're more prone to in your area is a huge thing of that too. Knowing those hazards and which ones are going to be more applicable to your area will help you say, okay, these ones are higher priority than these ones, but I still want to know these ones. But these are priority A, B, and C. These are the top 3 that I got to know for my area. So those are the ones I'm going to focus on. For
everyone listening, if you haven't already, go home and take some serious thought into what you or your family are going to do during a fire, because when it happens, you want to be prepared. That's a serious challenge. That's something that now that I remember this, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna ask my wife. It's like, hey, we're in bed, middle of the night. There's a fire. What do you do? And we're gonna start running through some scenarios. It's probably gonna start tonight.
Learning.
Yeah.
Yeah. You wouldn't believe how something so small and simple like knowing that will change everything about what you do. Now we've got a plan. Now we're prepared.
That's the difference between
life and death.
That's the difference between me getting to my kid in time.
Mm-hmm. Knowing how I'm going to get down the hallway, what's the most efficient route to get to my kid and get them out of the building.
And get them out of the building.
Yeah, absolutely. So knowing that, what natural disasters, what human man-made risks are you more prone to, in your area when it comes to working downtown in a warehouse? Are there chemical spills that you got to worry about? Is the building, does it
gas leaks?
Does it have a ton of flammable material, flammable chemicals that sit on the inside? What do you need to know about those? Knowing those types of things will know what, this is the same thing as a natural disaster, but this is a human-made disaster.
Yep.
How do I, knowing those situational things about your area as well will also play into that, and how do you adjust for those and how do you account for those? So keeping that stuff in, we've said this one before, and this plays into some of the basics, but knowing the importance of knowing your surroundings, being aware of your surroundings. That falls into
situational awareness. We've talked about that maybe 3 times.
but it all comes back, you know?
Every time. Every time.
Some of these basic skills that we bring up and we bring up and we bring up, when you get into these higher skills like this, you notice that it almost always leads back. There's 3 or 4 of those basic skills that come into it. That situational awareness, knowing what if I'm protecting a warehouse, what's in the warehouse? Is it flammable? Is it this? Is it that? That's situational awareness. That's how it ties in. This will help me, you know?
And all this practice is not just going to help you. If you're drilling fire drills, it's going to help you in case of a fire. But being prepared for a fire is also going to give you a little bit of an edge if there's a tornado. Yeah, you're not going to, you're not going to be prone to panic. You've drilled something similar. You're going to have some sort of a level head. You're not just going to freak out.
Absolutely. So these, that's the importance of the basics that lead into the importance of these higher functions and these skills and knowing that stuff. And then, of course, this leads back into the physical security. We as officers, what does that mean for us? When it comes to knowing these things, it allows that when someone comes up and says, hey, what do we need to do? Or if the emergency is going on and someone comes running up in a panic, you're calm and collect because you know the material. You understand what's supposed to be done. You know how to enact it and how to keep them safe. And so it brings a sense of calmness to everybody around you. So when they do come up with that stuff, you can say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is how we're going to do it, and this is where you're going to go. And so it goes into that. It never stops.
It doesn't. As McFarlane likes to say, relentless.
Yes. And so keeping that stuff up and learning those things will lead into the physical security of this, making it to where someone is more accepting of what you have to say because you've got a calm demeanor versus you're standing there panicking with them.
Yep. Yeah, that's for all cases. That's not just for fire drill. If that's something as simple, it's something as simple as, hey, somebody needs some medical attention. They're going to look at you. If you're just going to go, I'm not sure.
What are the protocols? Know the protocols.
What's the point of you being there?
Yeah.
Know where that AED is. Know where that med kit is. Mm-hmm. Especially if you're QRT and you're bouncing around all over the place and you have no idea where anything is. I imagine you're doing some sort of a patrol, interior or exterior. Find something.
And that's the thing is this applies to not just that stuff, but it also applies to lighting, signage. Yep. If we're in a active shooter, you want to turn the lights off. I need to know where light switches are. If you're in a flood, or you're in a fire, or there's a slip hazard, or there's a spill hazard in the warehouse you're in. Having this, knowing where the signs are for that type of thing, and being able to know where they go, place them out, and make sure all that stuff, that adds into that security presence. It adds into the value of what we do there. Knowing where the cameras are, in case something happens, there's a vehicle accident in the parking lot. You know where the vehicle accident happened in the parking lot. You know when someone asks, your supervisors, the management for the company that you work for is like, hey, where is it was in the parking lot. Do we have cameras there? Yep, we have 2 cameras that watch that area. It all bleeds into that.
Yeah. The importance of that, I mean, if something simple happens and a supervisor shows up and he's asking about the scenario, odds are we're going to ask, hey, can you pull camera footage? Can you look at this and can you show me what happened? That way I can bring it up the chain of command, or we can walk through it together here on site. But knowing your site and your level of access to the site, because even if you don't have access to cameras, you got to know who to go to. And nowadays, I mean, we pull footage for just about everything. Mm-hmm. So knowing your site is key, and it keeps you from, if you're trying to be noticed by supervisory staff and you're trying to move up, if you don't know your site, how do we expect you to know 5 or 6 to 10, 25, 30 different posts to give a basic rundown to somebody?
So if you're looking into, you want to learn these things, or you want to get some advice on stuff, or you want to learn more about it, there are tons of resources you can go out to. FEMA's got emergency response courses. They've got stuff you can read up on. The American Red Cross has stuff you can do. I mean, there's tons of places that you can go. You can Google that stuff, and it will come up with tons of resources for you to research and read and learn and make yourself better on.
Oh, OSHA's got to have
A ton of them. Ton of them. Ton of them. So, read that stuff up, look it up, learn, because that's what's going to make you better. That's what's going to set you apart as an officer, but not just that. It's what's going to help set your company apart. So when you're at your clients, they know they can trust that you because you're there. They know that.
Yep.
So keep that stuff in mind, guys, when you're looking at that stuff. These little basic things that we went over again, situational awareness pops back up. Learn those basics, master those basics, because they all apply into the big stuff like this stuff here, where you've got to know that stuff.
I wouldn't even have to try very hard to tie in communication.
No, this is super easy to tie communication in.
Back to the basics.
So that's how important that stuff is. So when you're doing that, and don't forget, if you want to learn more, you can always research this stuff yourself. Pick this stuff up outside of your normal working hours and learn and read. And this goes back into the continual growth, continual learning. Another basic.
Wow.
Never stop, guys. Always be tenacious at this stuff, because it's what's going to make you better. It's going to make not only you feel more confident in the situation, but it's going to make everybody around you feel more confident and safer.
We're going to be 3 years down the line, and we're going to go communication.
We're doing that now.
Situational awareness. Remember when you talked about that in December of 24? Well, it's December of 27, and guess what? Communication.
So with that, we're going to let you guys get to enjoy your weekend. I'm not going to do the weather. It's cold. We all know it's cold. It's going to stay cold. Welcome to winter. Dress for the weather, guys. Be prepared for that stuff.
Dress for the weather. If you need a Titan jacket,
let us know.
Please let us know.
If you're a Titan employee.
If you're in key.
We appreciate it, guys. Everything you guys do in the field allows us to continue to do this stuff. Thank you guys so much. Don't forget, when it comes to taking care of yourself, hydration is key. Hydration is the day before, not the day of. Thanks, guys. Enjoy your weekend.